Do me a favor, don't for a single solitary second think Miami's just getting into the playoff.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. This episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Talking about Miami, a couple teams on upset alert today. Notre Dame and, SMU. They better watch out because Santa Claus is around the corner, but he's got a lump of coal in his stocking. And if you think it's too early for a Christmas metaphor, too bad. That's just way too bad. And then five-star quarterbacks, Bryce Underwood, JuJu Lewis, thoughts on those guys committing to their respective spots, Michigan and Colorado. But first, Miami. So the Hurricanes are 10-1, having a really good season. The one stumble at Georgia Tech, the one team, I guess, Mario Cristobal just cannot get by whilst the head coach in Coral Gables. They go to Syracuse this week. Now, when you think about the 12-team playoff and who's getting in and who's going to get left out and who deserves consideration, I hope in your mind you aren't looking at Miami and saying, well, they're going to get in the playoff. Nope. No. Oh, no, they can get into the playoff. They control their own destiny to get there. I think there's just one way for Miami to get in, and that's to win the ACC. If they go out and lose this week at Syracuse, done. Look at what the committee is doing to a 9-2 Clemson team right now. They have an opportunity. Clemson is a really interesting case for an at-large bid because they're 9-2. They have faltered a little bit, but they've found their footing, maybe, possibly. If they beat South Carolina this week, they'll pick up a top 20 win. A top 20 win at 10-2? I'm just saying. Go look at Miami's schedule. They don't have that quality win in the same sense, or they don't have a lot of quality wins. They have some fine wins. They have some okay wins. They have a Heisman-capable quarterback in Cam Ward. But if he is not at his best again and again, this Miami team doesn't have a counterpunch. They run for 180 yards a game. Now, some of that may very well be that Cam Ward is so good they throw the ball a bunch. It's also because their defense can get them into spots where they have to throw the ball, like against Cal, when they were down by 20-plus points. And, you're not going to run the football a whole heck of a lot. But their running game, they've got a trio of running backs. One of them's Damian Martinez. He hasn't been the lead guy, though. They have not been as effective running the ball when I watched them play as I thought they would be coming into this year. Third year with Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal, Cam Ward, good running backs. I thought it'd be a little bit better. They have leaned into Cam Ward. And look, it's hard to not do it. I think Miami's receiving corps is one of the most underrated in all of college football. I would absolutely, positively put them as one of the 10 best units in the country, maybe even top 5. And they don't get talked about a whole heck of a lot because it's just, Cam Ward's great. Go look at the receivers he's throwing to. They're not bums. They're the opposite of that. They are quite good. But Miami plays at Syracuse this week. And if you want to beat Miami, there's one of two ways that you can do it. There's the way Virginia Tech ended up almost doing it with the Hail Mary and such. And that's, you know what? Let's get into a shootout. Let's go try and score. Let's just go blow for blow and see if we can come up with a stop in a big spot. Now, Duke maybe wasn't trying to do that, but ended up trying to do it. And Duke was competitive for a while. And then all of a sudden, Miami went on one of those late game runs. And Wake Forest for a little while kept it low scoring. And they hit their chunk plays when they wanted to, but they were not trying necessarily to go blow for blow. They were being a little bit more methodical. They were killing the clock. They were taking the air out of the ball, making Cam Ward stay on the sideline and watch, and then playing good defense. Georgia Tech was able to do that masterfully. So that's one approach. Or one approach is try to go blow for blow. But the other approach is what Georgia Tech was able to do. Take the air out of the ball. They had a 10-minute, 45-second touchdown drive. 10 minutes they took off the clock. Syracuse isn't going to do that. But Syracuse does have one of the formulas to keep up with Miami. Because that Hurricanes defense, I think it's pretty clear. They played better against Wake Forest. Wake Forest is not a great football team. And they made it a little bit closer than it needed to be. They came up with a defensive touchdown in that game, of course. But still, I don't think Miami's defense is just fixed. I don't think that Miami's defense is going to be something that it hasn't been all year. It just is what it is. We're not in week 4 or 5. We don't have half a season for Miami to get these things right. This is what Miami's defense is. If they're not making a big play, they're probably giving up a big play. They've got a great defensive line, but it's not all clicking right now. There is something that's just a little bit off. It's a Lego set that has been constructed and it's got a good solid foundation, but once you got up to the top, it's kind of a jangled mess. It doesn't look coordinated. The colors are off. You used the wrong brick over here, or you didn't have the right style of piece to put in over here, so this moving aspect of it, it's not working very well. Yes, I loved Legos as a kid, and frankly still do as an adult, so sue me. So I don't expect that Miami defense to suddenly figure it out. Syracuse this year averages 454 yards a game on offense. You think they're going to go for some yards in this game? You think they're going to go for some points? I do. This game will come down to one thing and one thing only. Who wins the turnover battle? Because Cam Ward can cough up the football. Remember, they had a chance to beat Virginia Tech, but Cam Ward was stripped trying to do a little bit too much late in that football game. And Syracuse this year is an 8-win team. Did you know that? Did you know? I just want to make sure everybody knows that. This is not some stumbling to the finish line Syracuse program. Fran Brown in year 1 doing a heck of a job. This is one of the most under-the-radar coaching hires who is having immediate success over there in Syracuse. The Orange are at home. It is the last game of the regular season. Won't be their last overall game. But boy, it sure looks like one of the biggest games on Syracuse's schedule. And what Fran Brown is looking for right now, what his team is looking for, is that signature marquee win. That signature, it could have been against Pitt when the Panthers were still undefeated, but that didn't happen because Kyle McCord couldn't stop throwing it to the wrong team. This would be that signature win. So I don't worry about the motivation level for Syracuse. I don't worry about their style matching up with, heck, these teams are kind of mirrors of each other. You've got a great quarterback who you're running almost your entire offense through, and you are going to go as he goes. And Cam Ward is better than Kyle McCord, and that's why Miami is a better team than Syracuse. That's why they are favored in this football game. But Kyle McCord, when he's on, he'd go for 400 yards in this game, without question. And Cam Ward on the other side could go for 450, and they could combine for 10 touchdowns. I think this could be a wildly entertaining football game. But even then, if Miami's able to go on the road and win, I haven't made my pick yet. I'm just saying the upset potential, it should be in the back of your mind. It should get moved from the back of your mind to the front of your mind. You should think about Miami and Syracuse, but if Miami goes on to win this game, go to the ACC title game, play SMU and lose, even with all the chaos that has ensued in college football, my confidence level that Miami gets into the playoff. Now, I want to make this very clear. I think they should be in. I think any 11-win Power 4 football team should be into a 12-team playoff. We'll see what the committee does with the rankings come Tuesday night. We'll have a reaction show up later today. I do not have full faith and confidence that the committee will look at an 11-win Big 12 or ACC team and automatically say you're into the playoff. You could very well see, they should be, but don't sit there and tell me that it is an absolute 100% lock, because it isn't. So when you think about who's going to make the playoff, I hope you see SMU as every bit as likely to get into that playoff as Miami, because I think they have the exact same path. And by the way, speaking of upset alerts, SMU 100% on upset alert this week. And so's Notre Dame. I'll tell you why next. After I tell you about Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on everything you want to go to. Sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you want, Game Time's got it. They give you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect. You know how many variables there are when you're buying tickets? Game Time is taking those out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Not tomorrow. You want to download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. I've got a couple more upset alert meters that you need to have ratcheted up at least into the very beginning of the red. Like if you think about, where Homer Simpson works in the beginning of that show in the intro at the nuclear factory, when you have those scales that get ratcheted up, this is not all the way to the end in the red, but it's like just hovering. It's kind of fluctuating back and forth. In the red, not in the red. In the red, not in the red. Notre Dame, SMU. Let's start with Notre Dame. So Notre Dame has been playing really good football. I thought they would win and cover against Army. So I guess that means my assessment of how their fans should be feeling, no vibe. I don't give them a vibe after that when you do exactly what I expect you to. Notre Dame is playing very quietly at a national championship level. I think. Spencer, why'd you add that I think in there? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. The reason is that Notre Dame's schedule on paper this year was plenty tough to say 11-1 or 12-0 guaranteed in the playoff, 10-2 probably in the playoff. Notre Dame is now at a place where 10-2 probably gets you out of the playoff. Very curious to see where the committee ranks them going into this final week of the regular season, but they're at USC this week. Is there a program in America that USC, by the way, picked up a win that, look, it should have been a lot easier than it was, but it just isn't right now. Nothing is easy for USC, but nothing is easy for USC's opponents either. Notre Dame's favored by 6.5 in this spot. And though the Trojans have struggled in one-possession games, they figured out how to win one last week against UCLA on the road. Now, why don't we call that a half-road game? Because it's across town. There are more UCLA fans than USC. But you're not undergoing the rigors of a road trip with long travel and bus rides and planes and time zones and whatnot. You're not even leaving the city there. So that's barely a road game. But still, it's something. It was something for USC to finally win a close game, and they did so against UCLA. So the Trojans are 6-5. They're going to go to a bowl game. And just a quick side note, I saw this thought on Twitter, and this would be the greatest thing ever. Someone put USC and Oklahoma in a bowl game. Somebody, please do it. Please do it. That would be the most watched Relia Quest or Duke's Mayo Bowl. I don't care. Make it happen. Somebody, please. Whatever reach this show has, please reach someone who understands why that would be the greatest, quote-unquote, non-consequential bowl game of all time. It would be phenomenal television, but I digress. USC has made it really hard on themselves, but they have made it hard on their opponents as well. When you look at the games they have lost, they've held a fourth quarter lead in all of them. No one is blowing out USC. So Notre Dame comes into this game and they're rolling. Riley Leonard is slinging it a little bit all over the yard. They're running the ball well. They're playing great defense. Notre Dame is playing really good complementary football. And I don't question whether the Irish are going to be motivated to get up for this game. Because Marcus Freeman should just be outright telling them, you have to win or you're not going to make the college football playoff. Because that's the way it should be. With a loss against NIU at home, because I don't know why you'd ever play at NIU, but with a home loss to NIU, you don't get the margin for error that would have existed if you had, say, lost week 1 at Texas A&M. If that was their only loss, 10-2 would have a more reasonable argument. But you're on thin ice. You are on Dark Knight Rises, exile level thin ice if you are Notre Dame here. But USC, the opportunity to play spoil, it's something. It's not everything that USC would like to be playing for, but it is something. And Jaden Maiava has stepped in at starting quarterback, and Miller Moss has been watching from the sideline. Kirk Herbstreit said he wasn't with the team. I think he assumed that was going to happen because a lot of quarterbacks do that. Miller Moss hasn't done that, to his credit. Won't be a guy who I'm surprised if he enters the transfer portal come the offseason, but we aren't there, and we're in the spot where Jaden Maiava, former starter at UNLV, who's got a big game this week and got a big win last week, and they win this week, they can play in the Mountain West Championship game. His former team's doing fine without him, but he has kind of justified his move to USC. He's getting an opportunity to showcase Lincoln Riley what he can do in this offense. He's done a pretty darn good job. It hasn't been great. The explosive Lincoln Riley offenses of old have not shown up this season. They just haven't. But USC's defense is a lot better than it used to be. If you took USC's defense last year and you put it on this year's team, Lincoln Riley would not be 6-5 going into this game against Notre Dame. Lincoln Riley would probably be 3-8. But alas, he is not. So he's going to make a bowl game, and he's got a chance here to remind Trojan fans what he's capable of. Because this is a game where if USC wins, the Trojan fans on the one hand will be annoyed, saying, why didn't you play like that all year? And on the other hand, they'll look at it and go, well, maybe not all hope is lost. Maybe it's not a complete and utter disaster if you can beat Notre Dame with this team year one of the new defensive coordinator with Danton Lynn. So, who I think has done a great job, by the way. I think Lincoln Riley and the offense have let the Trojans down far more often than the defense has this year. So, that's what I'm looking at going into this game. USC's got plenty of motivation. Notre Dame's got plenty of motivation. This is not a throw-in game. This is, of course, a great helmet game. Notre Dame, USC. It's at the Coliseum. Notre Dame's got to go a couple time zones away. Teams that do that, they tend to struggle. Notre Dame hasn't been playing close games. USC has been playing close games. Does that come into play here? Notre Dame can overwhelm USC. The Trojans could struggle to move the ball on this Notre Dame defense, which has been playing exceptionally well. But if they don't, or if Notre Dame's offense is not able to go up and down the field and score a bunch of points, this could get very interesting. So I've got a higher upset alert meter on this game than I do on the next one I want to talk about, and that's SMU hosting Cal. So two things. This is, again, a 2 time zone jump. Cal is about a 2-touchdown underdog. Teams of that underdog size have been winning regularly throughout this college football season. So don't write this game off in your mind just because, it's a big point spread. Yeah, that hasn't mattered a whole heck of a lot this year. Anything 2 touchdowns and under, yeah, the underdog can win the game outright. Cal has actually won a road game as a 2-touchdown underdog. Week 2 at Auburn. That was a tougher road environment to go into than what SMU has. SMU's a better football team than Auburn, but Auburn has a tougher environment. So at the very least, Cal's not going to have to deal with all sorts of communication problems. Like SMU hasn't reestablished its brand yet or rebuilt it up enough to pack that stadium in a big way. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I'm a fan of every college football environment being as great as it possibly can be, but I haven't seen that from SMU. So Cal is battle-tested on the road, and they were battle-tested last week. I know Stanford isn't good, but in a rivalry game, you throw everything out the window. 98 yards in the boys. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Fernando Mendoza, post-game, somebody should put that on a t-shirt if they haven't already. Cal was down, let me do some quick math, 11 points in the fourth quarter. They had a 98-yard drive to take the lead, scored the last 14 in the game. They beat Stanford 24-21. So the California Golden Bears are bowl eligible. And now they go on the road and they have a chance to play spoiler. Do you know what Cal is really good at under Justin Wilcox? 2 things. Number 1, losing football games to winless teams. Florida State earlier this year, Arizona in the past, Colorado in the past, they're really good at that. You know what else they're good at? Playing up to their opponent when people don't think they have any business doing so. SMU's rolling. SMU could very well be the best team in the ACC. I think if they face off against Miami in the conference championship game, that is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight, but kind of the other version of that in which both teams are scoring 30-plus points. It could be wildly entertaining. Kevin Jennings is playing great football. The SMU defense is an underrated unit, much like Miami's wide receivers. But Cal in this spot is absolutely capable of playing up to SMU's level. And if SMU doesn't protect the football, Fernando Mendoza and Jaden Ott, they can do enough. I don't know that they can do a ton, but they can do enough. They need to muddy this game up. When they went and beat Auburn week 2, there were a lot of turnovers from the Tigers. That's the key. SMU escaped against Duke this year, turning the ball over 6 times. You can't do that. You can't even do half of that here against Cal. Fernando Mendoza, he can toss an interception every now and then. But if Cal wins the turnover battle, I bet they win this football game. So SMU better protect it. Because the California Golden Bears, they are not to be trifled with. Absolutely not. So keep your eye on those 2 games this week. Notre Dame on the road at USC. SMU at home against Cal. Upset alert meter, incredibly real. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Hit me up on X. formerly known as Twitter, and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube if you have not already. 5-star quarterbacks made moves, big moves, shockwaves in college football. Which one's more likely to start? Bryce Underwood at Michigan or JuJu Lewis at Colorado? That's coming up next. Right after we talk about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook right now. New customers can bet $5. That's right, $5 and get a lot more than that in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Plus, if you want to bet college football rivalry week, FanDuel.com is the place to do it, obviously. They've got spreads, money lines, over-unders. Even if you just want to poke around, see what information is out there, it's worth your time. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. You can bet something as simple as, Ohio State over Michigan. That's going to happen this week. Or if you feel really confident, SMU's beating Cal. That can be your first bet. Whatever it is, bet it at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So the big news last week. Bryce Underwood, LSU commit? Nah, Michigan. Rumors were, reports, whatever you want to call them, big NIL deal. Are we shocked? Is anybody shocked at that? Nah. Dave Portnoy's dunking on everybody on Twitter. Why? Based on what he said, would imagine he was pretty heavily involved. And JuJu Lewis flips to Colorado. So I want to talk about Bryce Underwood first, because I think he's slightly more interesting, but it's kind of a coin toss between these two guys. So Underwood flips from LSU to Michigan. Nothing's going right for Brian Kelly and LSU. They scrape by Vanderbilt at home. The Commodores cover by a half point. LSU did win the game, of course. Let's not get that confused in any way. But the end of the season hasn't been what they're looking for. The recruiting trail is not going how they would like it to, and then you lose the #1 quarterback, and he flips over to Michigan. So Michigan this year, all season long, has been thought of as, well, they're a quarterback away. They just need a quarterback. And that's true. That's true. Davis Warren has played much better the second half of the year. Michigan, I think their final 6 games, you'll look back and say, well, it was kind of a different team from the first 6 games. But they haven't been great this season. They're a pullback team. Am I surprised? No. Are Michigan fans, based on the ones I interacted with over the summer? Apparently so. But you know what? That's okay. Because Michigan's future looks just fine. They're still recruiting at a pretty good level, and bringing in Bryce Underwood, it's a big name. But the idea that Michigan is only a quarterback away, to me, is an inaccurate assessment of the Michigan offense from this season. Colston Loveland is going to the NFL. That guy's really good. He's really good. Who has Michigan been able to throw the football to besides Colston Loveland as their passing game has found a little bit of footing? That's just not that's not something that you can really come up with a consistent answer for, because it isn't there. So Michigan needs to hit the portal or have guys seriously develop on the perimeter. Now, maybe the guys they have in-house would look a lot better if they had better quarterback play. I'll give you that particular argument. But let's not pretend that Bryce Underwood is stepping into a situation in which he's going to have all the weapons in the world around him. I trust Michigan's offensive line. I trust their run game. I don't trust what they've got on the perimeter right now. I really don't. And as for Bryce Underwood himself, no, he's not going to be asked to do as much as even, say, Dylan Raiola at Nebraska or Trevor Lawrence at Clemson back in the day, or any of those other quarterback prospects that start as true freshmen. It's a really hard thing to do. Really, really hard thing to do. Sure, he's a guy who's talented enough to come in and do it effectively. But how many true freshmen can actually lead their program to a championship level? I think this is a huge move for Michigan. I think it is much bigger in 2026 than it is in 2025. I think 2025 for Michigan is going to be a foundational sort of year, because you cannot ask a true freshman to come in and run an offense right away and say, oh, he's going to light the world on fire. He could do a lot of really good things. He could do a bunch of good things. DJ Lagway at Florida is doing a lot of really good things. Go look at his numbers from last week's win against Ole Miss. He had his moments, had some spots, but he's not going for 300 to 400 yards a game. That just doesn't happen in college football. It's a big jump. It is a big, big jump from high school to college football, especially for quarterbacks. So this is a guy who can come in and absolutely succeed right away. I don't think he immediately catapults Michigan back into the Big Ten and national championship discussion come 2025. Maybe I'm underselling him. And the one thought I have on that as to how I could be wrong with that opinion is he's not going to be asked to do a lot. I think Underwood has a higher chance of succeeding in the short term than JuJu Lewis does at Colorado. Because over at Colorado, they have one system, and that's, hey, quarterback, throw the ball a lot. And we've got great receivers. If you took Michigan and Colorado's offenses and you blended them together, you'd have the best offense in all of college football. You'd have a power running game that can carry the day with great play action shots that is with a run game incredibly well schemed. You'd have a good offensive line and you'd have elite receivers. But these are two different teams. So Bryce Underwood can come in and succeed, but he's not changing Michigan's fortunes back to a championship level right away. Remember, JJ McCarthy, the guy who led Michigan to a national championship, did not start right away in his college career. Did not start right away. Took a little while. It's going to take these guys a little while. Which brings me to JuJu Lewis at Colorado. Couple thoughts here. Number one, far more is going to be put on his shoulders than Bryce Underwood at Michigan. That's the first thing. Second thing, for anybody who thinks that Deion Sanders has NFL aspirations or is not going to be around at Colorado for the long haul, this move should make you seriously question that outlook. I'm not going to give you a 100% certainty factor that Deion Sanders wouldn't try and follow his son into the NFL. He could. He absolutely could. But for all the critics Deion Sanders has out there, or all the criticisms that he faces, I think most of them are incredibly valid. But one thing about Deion Sanders, I do believe he is genuine in, is his desire to lead young men to be the best version of themselves on and off the field. You're not doing that in the NFL. You're doing that in college. You are doing that in college. You are that coach. You are that father figure. I think it is the most redeeming quality about Deion Sanders that I have seen. I don't care for everything he does, but I also don't hate every single thing that he does. And by the way, he's clearly a pretty good football coach. That's just becoming increasingly obvious to anyone who's paying attention. But if you're looking for a reason for him to stick around, mentoring JuJu Lewis and making him into the next great Colorado quarterback, that's something that he hasn't proven yet. And whether or not he'd admit it, I think there's a big part of Deion Sanders that wants to prove the doubters wrong. He'll say, don't listen to him, tune out the noise and all this sort of stuff. No, I think he hears. I think he knows. And I think he likes being in Colorado because he knows he can do well. And he's brought in a bunch of talent the last couple of years. But if you're looking for a reason to latch onto to say, well, why would Deion Sanders stick around? Well, because he's got JuJu Lewis, who's not going to be Shedeur Sanders in year one. I think Colorado is absolutely a pullback candidate in 2025. But come 2026, once JuJu's gotten his feet wet, got a season under his belt, learned how to play at the speed of college football, made freshman mistakes, learned from those freshman mistakes, gets another year of coaching from that staff who are clearly doing a really good job. Yeah, I think this can be a program that continues to win in the Big 12, which is just the one most wonderful, crazy conference championship race ever. And I don't think it's going to go anywhere, quite frankly. I think it's going to continue to be the league of utmost parity year in and year out. And I think that's great. And we should enjoy it for what it is. But JuJu Lewis committing to Colorado, flipping from USC, I think it represents a level of commitment from the Buffs and the NIL front that you should absolutely be excited about if you're a Colorado fan, number one. And number two, I think it shows that your head coach wants to stay there. How involved do you think Deion Sanders was in that recruitment? I can't say personally. I wasn't there. I don't have this sourced. I'm just saying I'm going out on a limb and declaring he was probably heavily involved. And I don't think you don't flip a quarterback from USC And the quarterback whisperer that is Lincoln Riley. I know Miller Moss isn't working out, but last time I checked, Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray are all starting in the NFL. Caleb Williams starting in the NFL. That appeal has still been there. You don't get a quarterback to go from that guy to you if the head man isn't heavily involved. So I think this speaks volumes about what Deion Sanders' future plans are going to be. I think that's an encouraging thing if you're a Colorado fan. But for both him and Bryce Underwood, I will remind Colorado fans, Michigan fans, and any other college football fan out there listening to the show right now, true freshmen are not leading you at the quarterback position to a conference or national championship. That is not something that we hardly ever see. Give me every example you can think of. But for these guys, it's going to take some time, but they can both be great. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.